I had just moved to my new college town. Didn't even have a cell phone yet, after leaving behind the one my folks paid for during undergrad. I was grown and could take care of myself. Eye roll. What a nitwit I was. As I left the parking lot with my purchases, I noticed this truck pull up behind me at the exit. It was late and there weren't too many people out. I pulled out and so did he. It was a few miles down a long retail street with lots of stoplights before my turn. As I drove, I realized the guy in the truck was trying to get my attention. I was in a relationship, so I ignored him. Over the next few miles, he kept trying to get me to look at him. Some red lights he would end up ahead of me, some behind or beside me. At every light, he positioned himself so he could stare at me, either directly or in one of his mirrors. His gaze was unwavering and my anxiety rose. He was driving oddly, speeding up close to my bumper, hitting his brakes when he was in front of me, swerving close to my car a couple of times. Finally, at a red light where he was beside me, I glanced over and started to panic when I was met with an unbelievably empty, unwavering stare, and realized he was fiddling with himself. He was getting off on the fact that I was terrified, and he was following me, and he was trying to force me to pull over. At one point, I scooted through an intersection on a hard yellow a couple of cars ahead of him, thinking I could shake him. Nope. He went around the cars at the light and ran the red, and got back in front of me. A freeway entrance ramp came up and I tried to fake him out by putting on my signal and getting into the merge lane for it. He took the bait and started up the ramp. I quickly got out of the merge lane and continued straight. Again, I'd hoped to lose him, but he drove his truck down the embankment to keep following. At another light where he was beside me, I pulled through the light and then turned at the last possible second. He made a U-turn and ran another red to follow me. My panic ramped up at that point. With no cell phone, no sense of direction, in a new city, I didn't know what to do. So I turned on classic rock and forced myself to sing along and forced myself to go the speed limit so I wouldn't crash out of terrified stupidity. I decided to drive to the supermarket across town because I remembered it had a police station in it. He followed me all the way there. He burned out of the lot as soon as he saw all the cop cruisers parked out front. I filed a report and asked for a police escort home. I insisted because something told me this creep was waiting for me to leave the police station. He was. As soon as I pulled out, I saw him. I pulled over and told the officer following me, and he went after him, but the truck had taken off and the cop couldn't catch him. The police got the surveillance video from the first store. It turned out this jerk had been dogging me the entire time I was shopping. I saw him on surveillance footage following me through the store. I saw him follow me out, close enough to grab my elbow. I saw footage of him circling the lot in his truck waiting for me to pull out when I took too long to unload my cart. My heart sank. I was able to remember 6 of 7 digits of his plate and the make and model of his truck. In the end, the cops did nothing. They said it was a he said/she said, since the surveillance video didn't catch him doing anything particularly unlawful and was a losing case to try to charge him with anything. I traded vehicles with a friend for a couple of months to try to feel safer and continued with my life. I had no idea what this disgusting piece of S4 did just a handful of months later, until almost 15 years had passed. I was watching a Discovery AD show about the kidnapping and murder of Sandy Jeffers. I almost fell out of my seat when I saw the mugshot of her killer, Aaron Lee Skeen. It was him. I was so disgusted that law enforcement did nothing in my case that I tracked down the investigator in the murder case, and after verifying some things about his vehicle that were changed in the TV reenactment to weed out people making crap up, she took my contact info and official statement. She could neither confirm nor deny that my run-in was with Skeen, but qualified her statement by saying, "At least you don't have to worry about him anymore because he got life without parole." I only wish something could have been done when he terrorized me. Perhaps things would have been different for Sandy. One day when I was walking to the shop at night, there was this guy there who I'd never seen before. He kind of appeared from thin air as I was watching TikToks, and it was dark, so I didn't see him until he was close. I jumped as he said something because he spooked me but quickly recovered. He had a friendly smile and a surprisingly well-kept beard for a homeless man. He asked for some change, but I didn't have any, so I apologized and moved on. While I was there at Tesco, I felt bad for him, so I bought him some strawberries. Even Googled if you can eat strawberries without washing them, and it should be fine. When I walked back, instead of watching TikToks, I used my torch, so I'd be able to spot him. He seemed to be gone, however. I also didn't feel like looking for him, so I planned on keeping the strawberries in case I ran into him again. I turned off my torch and got back on TikTok, and after a short walk, I was getting close to home. I messaged my girlfriend if she could open the door because, like always, I forgot my keys. I just hoped her phone wasn't in flight mode, as her phone has the worst battery and dies ridiculously fast. When I got to the door, she hadn't replied yet, so I went to knock on the door, hoping she'd hear it. But then suddenly the man was there, waiting at the door. I was kind of stunned, not sure what to do, but struggled to control my panic. I asked him what he was doing here and what he wanted. He just smiled as he slowly approached me. He reached into his pocket and all my instincts told me to run, but he didn't pull out a knife. He pulled out a set of keys. They had my girlfriend's keychain, a little picture of her hometown. I almost forgot about the man and immediately tried calling her, but it immediately went to voicemail. The man still had that same friendly smile, which now just seemed sinister to me. He dangled the keys in front of my eyes and said, "Keys cost money." I was really confused and panicked, so I had to take a moment to gather my thoughts before I could respond to him, but eventually managed to tell him that I didn't have any change, but that he could have both packs of strawberries, and that one of them was already meant for him. His smile immediately disappeared and took the place of a cold, chilling, emotionless expression. Keys, cost, money. I tried to tell him again that I didn't have any money on me, but he interrupted me. Time to go. And before I could even comprehend what just happened, he had disappeared into the darkness, and as soon as he was gone, my girlfriend opened the door. I rushed in, slammed the door behind me, and broke out in tears while hugging her. She, for good reason, was really confused, but her confusion changed to concern when I told her what had just happened. She also proceeded to show me that her keys were on her, safely stored in her backpack. After that night, I tried to stay around my girlfriend as much as possible, and we luckily both worked from home, so that was easy enough. I also stopped going out to Tesco at night and asked my girlfriend to tell me when she went out so I could come with her. We didn't run into the man after that day, and everything seemed fine again. We slowly started going outside without the other again, until one day when I got back home from a workout and the door was wide open. It had been over a month since my run-in with the man, so I just thought my girlfriend had forgotten to close the door after a shop. So I went inside and closed the door. I yelled that I was back to no response, which was odd. I also didn't hear The Office playing from the TV, which was probably even stranger than the lack of response. So I walked into the living room, and there I didn't see my girlfriend, but there was the man, sitting on our small sofa. I immediately called 999, the emergency number here in the UK, but he was already talking to me. Life costs money. She didn't have money. I tried to focus on the person answering the phone and managed to push the word police out of my throat, but tears were running down my face. I was convinced he had murdered her, just because that one time I didn't have change for him. Life costs money, he said again, staring deep into my soul with piercing eyes. I put my phone down and frantically started looking for money. I don't ever use cash, but managed to find about £8 and handed it to him. He smiled at me again with that terrible smile. I thought he approached me but walked past me, dropping my girlfriend's keys on the floor, and walked off. Police arrived not long after and I told them everything, but they never found the man. They did, however, find my girlfriend. She was wandering the streets around my house and looked like she hadn't eaten in weeks, but she was alive and fully recovered after a few weeks. We never leave each other's side now and only order our groceries. We haven't seen or heard from the man in almost a year now, but we're still constantly on edge. This happened during the summer of 2015, and I had just graduated high school, and I still lived in my hometown. I was out with some friends and it was getting late, around 1 a.m., so I decided to head home. I stopped by a drugstore close to my house that was 24/7 to pick up some aspirin and snacks. The one I went to was in the same parking lot as a supermarket, important. I parked my car close to the store and it was empty. There were no more than 2 other cars in this giant parking lot, and I was nowhere near them. I head in and grab what I came to get quickly because I had this overwhelming feeling of dread the whole time. I felt like someone was watching me, but I couldn't see anyone else there besides me and the cashier. Then, after I had gotten everything I intended to buy, I stalled checking out and just went aisle by aisle looking at random things because I thought whoever was out there would leave if I took too long. The whole time I thought I was being paranoid because I wasn't used to going out late. Strict parents growing up. After 20 minutes of that, I pay and leave the store. I get to the door and bolt to my car, pepper spray in hand, and lock myself in. I turned my head to check the back seat, and right before I could breathe a sigh of relief because no one was there, someone tapped on my window. I looked around before I left the store near the entrance, and no one was around my car. So how did I not see a person there? This is where I really freaked out. I don't know if this person was Ted Bundy inspired or what, but this was odd. He was a very handsome blonde man with slightly long hair and a cast on his arm. Now my first instinct was to drive off, but he was leaning on the front hood part of my car, and I didn't want to hurt him, so I rolled my window down just an inch so he could speak and maybe back up just a bit so I could drive off without hitting him. But nope, he stayed glued to my car. He then asked me if I could help him with directions and look up an address for him. I said, I need to go, sir. Maybe ask in the drugstore if they can help. Already went to the supermarket and they couldn't help. That place closed at 8. And there was no way this guy has just been lurking around for 5 hours waiting for some random girl's help. He then went on about feeling tired and if I could just give him water or food I bought since he had no money. I told him okay and began to reach to my passenger side to grab the chips I got and began to roll the window down slightly. As I expected, he moved closer to my window, but he was now off the car. So I hit the gas, he chased my car, and I heard a scraping sound on the side as I pulled away. I didn't drive directly home in case I was followed and drove down the highway for an hour because I was so distraught over what happened. I finally got home and the entire side of my car was scrapped from the door almost to the trunk. I am sure he used a knife or some sharp object because it was a rough scrap. I reported the incident, but they never found him or any similar incidents in my town. He was watching me the whole time, maybe from the windows of the store, because how else would he have known I bought food? I also think he hid behind my car so I couldn't see him when I came out. I feel like he was trying to get me before I got in my car, but I got in too fast. When I was 18, I got a job at Walmart. Small town, not much else there for someone fresh out of high school. I'd been there about a month and worked in the jewelry department, usually from mid-afternoon until the department closed at 9 p.m., and I would close the department myself. But Walmart is open 24 hours, so other people were always around. One night I'm locking the cases up and putting things away, and an overnight stalker walks by and says hi. I look up, smile, and say hi back, then go about my business. This guy, the only way I can describe him is to say he looks like one of the Bee Gees. Shoulder-length frizzy hair, kind of a bouncy hop to his step when he walked. Mid-50s. This started to become a regular thing. On nights I closed by myself, he'd walk by and say hi, and I would say hi back. That's it. No conversations ever took place. Then on my birthday, a few of my friends who worked there got me a cake, and I hugged them and said thank you, etc. About an hour later, Mr. Bee Gees comes around with a birthday card and gave it to my manager to give to me. The manager thought it was extremely funny that this weirdo got me a card, until I opened it. Happy birthday. I saw you hugging those guys earlier. It made me mad, but I called a friend and talked it out, and he made me realize you're allowed to have friends other than me. Just please don't hug them anymore. Save those hugs for me. I don't know what kind of emotion showed on my face, but my manager grabbed the card and read it, then walked me back to the store manager's office and showed it to him. The store manager said the guy was joking, but that he would talk to him about it. I didn't see Mr. Bee Gees for around a week, until one night while I was closing, he plunked down a stuffed envelope on my counter as he walked by without a word. Inside were 6 pages front and back of pure crazy. It was his entire life story, all about his family and schools he went to, but with weird stuff like how his sister was a psychic and his father was an exorcist and all sorts of weirdness. The end of the letter was about how his friend who was 18 months old was missing, and he knew she was being raped because he could hear her screaming his name in his dreams. WTF? So I also went to the store manager and he had me write a written complaint. He told me not to go outside by myself and not to wander near where the guy might be while I'm on my breaks. No, get rid of him. 2 nights later, I was finishing up for the night, and the way the counter is set up there is one opening, and the counters go all the way around both sides. He brought a handcart around with boxes from my department, but pushed it into the only opening in the counter, so I was trapped inside. He just stood there and stared at me while I looked at him with what I'm sure was our terror. I was then, and still am now, riddled with anxiety. I don't like confrontation, and the last thing I wanted was for this weirdo to confront me about me reporting him. Twice, he whispers, "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." I turned around and started finishing my closing tasks, pretending he wasn't there, even though I could feel him watching me. After a few minutes, I just looked at him and said, "Weren't you told to stay away from me?" He gave me this gross predator grin and said, "Store manager's name," asked me if I was joking. I told him I was. Then he leaned in as close to me as he could get with the counter between us and whispered, "But I'm not joking." Then he walked away. For 2 weeks after that, he would randomly show up wherever I was. I would leave for lunch, he would be there. Even non-work places. I would go to the mall. He would be there. Another department manager told me he had been reported by 4 other people over the last 2 years for very similar behavior. I again went to my store manager, who told me the guy was harmless and maybe had a little bit of a crush. He was in his 50s and I was 18, 19 during this crap. A week later, I gave my notice and quit. He still works there, 13 years later. That's all we got from today's stories. Let me know what you thought of each individual story. Thanks for watching. And be sure to like and subscribe, because you would not want to miss the next story the Haunted Sketchbook got in store for you.